today we're going to be replacing the front tube on a Tuttio. Now, as you can see, this one's completely done. One too many wheelies. All right. Now, but in all seriousness, here's how we're going to do it. First, we got to take the wheel off the bike. Now, you're going to need a couple wrenches for this, and you might need a little help. Have somebody stabilize the bike for you, unless you have a stand, which we don't. So we're improvising. Again, we're going to loosen it up. We're going to pull out the main bolt for the front axle. And again, I'm not a mechanic, but I am stubborn, and I like figuring things out. So, once we get the wheel off the bike, now comes the fun part. Here's the tire spoons, which go ahead and roast me. I don't know how to use them. So you wing it. And I did just recently do the tube in the rear tire, which was a lot more difficult. Punctured quite a few. So have an extra tube on hand just in case, if you're like me and you don't know what you're doing. But you actually can do it with a little bit of effort. So the first thing we need to do is unset the bead from the front rim. And yeah, the internet said this was easy. Well, yeah, it's not. All right. And I know I'm wearing some busted slides. What can you do? You got to make do with what you got. So once we get the bead broken, we're going to pop that front lip over the rim and we're going to loosen up the tire. Now, as you can see, we got a little bit of rim in there. Now, what I did notice was the valve stem was completely sheared off, which made this part a little more difficult. But once I got that freed up, you poke it through the rim, and now we're going to remove the old tube. Again, there's probably easier ways to do this, but if you're like me, you're just going to wing it and make do with what you got. So let's tediously rip out this front tube. And again, you might need a little help, or you just get angry at it and you make it you make it work. Okay, so pull out that front tube. Once you get it all the way out, you can see where the hole is if you care. If not, we're just going to toss it to the side. So we got this out. It's completely shredded. It's got stuff all over my hands. All right. Anyway, moving on. We're going to get the new tube. We're going to take off the valve stem cap and one of the little nuts that are on there. Now, you could probably do both of them, but everything I've seen, one's plenty. Leave one on. So we're going to put just a little bit of air just to get this tube in kind of a shape that isn't floppy. You don't want a lot of air in here, otherwise it will fight you when you're putting it in the tire. So as we're moving through, make sure the nut rather is tightened down. And we're going to go find the hole for where the valve stem is, and that's where we're going to start. So point that out, line up your tube, get your valve stem in. Now this part can be a little tricky and it's a little difficult and can be painful on the hands, but again, I saw people using like dish soap, sliding it in. This tire was broken enough to where I didn't really need to resort to any of those techniques. But if you are putting new rubber on and a new tube, that's where you're gonna have a little bit of a struggle and you might need a little bit of lubricant. So again, we're gonna get this valve stem popped in and try to get it seated into the rim. Now, as you can see here, I'm having a little bit of difficulty doing that, but for the most part, we found the hole relatively easily. And yeah, I realized that I needed to shove a little bit more of the tube in before I got enough play in there to be able to get this valve stem poking through. So you see me struggle with it a bit here, but again, take your time. There's no rush. We're not NASCAR pit crew status here. We're just garage mechanic. Now I can see that poking in. I'm going to use my fingers on the underside of the rim to get it sticking all the way through. And now once we got that through, we're going to grab the nut that we removed earlier and we're going to slide that on. Now, important part here, you do not want to make this tight to the rim. You want to be able to have play with the valve stem so you can push the tube away from the rim when we're installing the tire back on. So I just, made it so I could see a few threads at the top, and then we go and we start shoving the tube in to the tire cavity. Now again, I'm not a professional. There's probably a better way to do this, but if you're like me and couldn't find a good video, here we are making one. Now again, roast me in the comments. What am I doing wrong? What can I do better? I'm here for all of the feedback. Like I said, not a professional, just stubborn enough to try to figure things out. So as we're shoving this tube in, you want to make sure that you get it past the edge of the rim. Otherwise, you're gonna have, the struggle that I had with potentially puncturing the new tube and finding out the hard way that you got to do this all over again. So you try to get it in there and push it back as far as you can so the tire can be seated properly. Now, once you feel like you got it good enough, do one quick double check all the way around. Make sure that everything is seated good and not in the way of the rim, to the best of your ability, of course. And once you're confident in where you got that placed, we're gonna get it installed back on. Now again, I start at the valve stem and move my way back to the top of the tire. And I don't know how to use tire spoons. Am I using this the right way? Did I do it right? I don't know. It worked, so we got somewhere, or it is working. So as we move, you wanna put a little pressure on the tire so it doesn't roll around. I just dropped the knee on it. And again, look at the busted slides. It's so busted. And I'm just using force to push this tire down as much as I can to get it seated. Like I said, this is a used tire, so it does have a little bit more play than a new tire would. So I'm just using, force, put some weight on it, trying to get it worked around. Again, drop a knee on it so the tire stays a little bit stable. And you kind of just got to manhandle this part. Now, at the end of it, you're not going to be able to get it all in. So this is your last check. This is your last check to where I'm going to put a spoon in and I'm going to start getting this seated all the way. And once you get it far enough, it will just roll itself over and on to the other side of the rim. Again, am I using the spoon right? I don't know. Did it work for what I'm doing? Yeah. Probably a better way. I feel like this is mostly technique and I am lacking that. So maybe by the third, fourth, fifth time of doing this, we'll be good. But if you're with me this far, consider dropping a like and a follow on this channel. We're going to do a lot more e-bike stuff. We're going to do mods, we're going to do repairs, and we're going to do replacement parts. So stay tuned for that. But again, greatly appreciated. And this last little bit is always a bit tough. So if you have help, ask for it. If not, be like me and just make it happen. So we got this seated now. We're going to screw this down. And I don't show this in the video, but after I put some air in it, I did tighten this down with a wrench. You don't want this part coming loose. Otherwise, you're going to have some bouncing issues and you can shear your valve stem and end up in this predicament all over again. So I just did finger tight to this so I could get some air into it, make sure everything's good. And then I went ahead and tightened it down after the fact. Again, look at the slides. So busted. So busted. But we keep it moving. We get the air going. We got it in. Feels good. And I did put a pressure gauge on this, make sure I got the right amount of pressure in there. But again, I'm just testing to make sure there's no leaks. Everything's seated good. And, we'll get it back on the bike. So that is getting the tube replaced. Now, let's throw it back on. All right, ask for help again, because we don't have a stand and we are winging it. But get that bolt back in, throw the spacer on, make sure your brake rotor is lined up with the caliper so you can get that in. Kind of wiggle it, make it work, wiggle it, get it through. Once you get it popping to the other side, you do need to add the other spacer on. So grab that spacer. I just left them on the ground because, that's the way I knew which side was what. Obviously, the smaller spacer's on the side without the brake, but neither here nor there. All right, now what we got to do is just tighten this down and you'll be good to go. So grab those two wrenches you had from the beginning, give it a few little twists and turns, make sure it's tight. You do not want this coming loose, otherwise that's going to end up for a bad day for the rider. So again, make sure you get this nice and snug on there, and just like that, we are good to go. If you do want to see more tutorial content like this, let me know in the comments. Also, be sure to drop a like and don't forget to subscribe. Much love.